Hello, and welcome to Enlightened Empaths, your community for the spiritually awakened, where we discuss, explore, and connect with fellow empaths, healers, intuitives, and seekers. Hello, empaths. Today we're going to be talking about a topic that we all need to know more about. I'm sure everyone listening right now has dealt with stress, anxiety, heartache, and grief. And we know the significant and damaging effect those emotions can have on our body and overall well being. But what if there was a tool you could use to help you regulate your energy? Well, joining us today is Howard Martin, the Executive Vice President of HeartMath, to discuss the fascinating and crucial connection between the heart, mind, body, and energy fields. HeartMath's research and innovative tools, like the Inner Balance Coherence Plus sensor and the app, help people manage stress and anxiety, improve mental health and emotional balance, and optimize performance. Wow, that sounds like a lot to promise. And so I can't wait to have you walk us through it. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Samantha and Denise, thank you so much for having me on your program. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
So are we. Well, tell us a little bit first about HeartMath and how long you guys have been around, like we were talking about before we recorded, and what you guys are focusing on now with your research.
I sure will. Well, our organization is HeartMath Incorporated, and then our nonprofit, the HeartMath Institute. We started out now 35 years ago. We have a founder. His name is Doc Childry, and Doc wanted us to put together a simple system that all people could use to help manage, the events of life and the speed up of change that he could see was taking place and would continue to be getting faster and faster. So we started out here in California. I'm originally from the South, as you probably hear from my accent. But we started here in Northern California in a mountain town outside of Santa Cruz. And when we started, we had very little resources. What we had was a group of dedicated people, and we sort of took it step by step, sort of building as we went, really sort of following our hearts in a way, and, using informed intuition as a way in which we were unfolding this system that Doc had envisioned. So we started out small with very little resource, but it did grow and it did grow and it did grow, one thing after another, published research in major scientific journals, training programs, technology development, lots of different things. So today we are a technology and a training company both. And we work all around the world, and we've touched the lives every year of millions of people all around the world. So it's grown from, a beginning of an idea, a commitment, and a belief into a viable, organization or organizations that have a pretty significant footprint in the world. And I'm very happy to say that I've been a part of it. And I wake up every morning and try to kindle enough appreciation to really honor what I've been given.
I think with the way things are right now for people, stress levels are getting increasingly higher environmentally, personal stresses. There's a lot going on in the world. But what I love about your work from the beginning until now that you've integrated technology is that it is very heart-centered. It's about that connection between the heart and the brain. It's not one or the other. You work them collaboratively together. Could you talk about that a little bit for people who might not be aware of what that really entails?
Yeah, our whole approach has been about heart. And we've taken a look at heart, this concept of heart, which has been around for thousands and thousands of years, from many different angles of view. And one way I could summarize that, Denise, would be saying, look at it this way. We have two hearts. We have this physical heart that we're doing all kinds of important biological functions, which we've uncovered it's doing a lot more than we even thought. But we also have the emotional and the spiritual heart, that side of heart. So we've taken a look at all of that, and we've incorporated that into the HeartMath system, which consists of, simple techniques and tools that can be applied in regular life, scientific research to underpin all of that, so that whatever we put into the world has that credential and believability that it's been researched. It's not just a concept. And then even the technology development that we've done to help people make that connection more with their heart, whether it's the physical connection that they want or the spiritual and emotional one that they want. So that's what the HeartMath system really is. And it's a combination of science and practical tools and techniques.
Thank you.
Yeah, but it feels as though this is a learned response that we can work on. Do you know what I mean? Like some people something bad will happen to them, something tragic, or maybe just something minor like stuck in traffic before work. And they'll have this big response to it. And other people are like, what are you going to do? And I've always believed that you can train yourself to be a little bit more calm and to like physically work on breathing so you calm your heart rate down. Has your work shown that it is actually malleable the way we can regulate our heart?
It's
Can we teach?
100% malleable how we can regulate the heart, but also change these behavioral patterns that you described. Um, we call that emotional self-regulation. It's learning how to better utilize this wonderful, magnificent gift we have called emotion. It gives us the ability to experience existence in such a unique way with all the feeling we can actually experience. And so learning how to better regulate our emotions is a key to managing the speed of change that we're living in and the stresses that are often associated with that, which Denise was describing earlier. What we found is that the best way to do that was through developing a stronger connection between heart, brain, and rest of the body. And there's many techniques out there that help. I think they're all good. They're important. The breathing techniques, the meditation, all that. People know these things. What most people don't really know is that when they engage the heart at physical levels and emotional levels, that's when the real magic starts to happen. That's when the changes can occur. And some of these same old patterns of reactiveness in the traffic jam or the grocery store line or in the relationship or with a coworker, all those things can change, and they are very malleable. They're completely malleable. It becomes a matter of choice. But when we live in a world where everyone is stressed and their behaviors are very reactionary, we sort of assimilate that. We adapt to that. We think that's normal. And maybe in some ways it is normal, but it's not optimal. It's not the way we want to live. And certainly we don't experience the fulfillment and the progression of expansion of our awareness when we live in this stressed out state, just going through the standard mechanical programming that seems to be happening all around us. But when we wake up just a little bit and we're willing to take a deeper look at our own hearts and apply what that heart's intelligence is actually offering us, we get insights into how we can make changes. And then I also think that the power of the heart, looking at it through the lens of it being courageous, it's strong, it's nobility, it's dignity, those kind of heart qualities are what gives us the impetus to actually apply the insights. Insights are great, but insights that aren't acted on, they don't do much, right? But when we act on these insights that we get, we can begin to see changes pretty quickly, actually. And those changes are psychological. The type of emotions that we most often experience, that translates all the way down to the physical body. And it can improve health and certainly improve, the outcomes that we want in life, leading to what I want for people, which is more fulfillment.
This is really fascinating to me because my background's in, you can't say this anymore, but I worked with a lot of emotionally disturbed kids, behavior disorders, dysregulated, all that kind of stuff. And I would see the long-term impact of that dysregulation on people's physical health, on children, on adults. And as you were speaking, I was wondering about people who haven't learned to regulate that heart space. Personally, I think that it can cause physiological damage. I think that mind-brain connection, that mind-body connection for health and wellness. Do you find that if people use your techniques, even though they've had a long period of, say, stress or heart-related anxiety, are they able to counter that? Are they able to?
Yeah, you can, and I think that what you're talking about is the correlation between what we feel and what we think and our physical body's response to that.
Yes,
I
exactly.
think that the biggest influencer on our physical health is the emotions. And I sometimes refer to it as the emotional diet that we eat, right? What emotions are we allowing to run through our system all the time that we're just not regulating at all, and that is a big predictor of what's going to happen in the physical body. Every single emotional response we have triggers a physiological response, starting in the nervous system, in the autonomic nervous system. It triggers differently in different ways relative to what we are choosing to experience emotionally. that nervous system influences 90% of every bodily function we have. And so it's triggering hormone releases into the body. It's affecting the cells. It's affecting the heart. It's affecting the brain. All of these different things are happening as a result of the responses that we're having to our emotions. Many years ago, this understanding began to unfold some. And in the beginning, it was about the negative emotions. I remember maybe, 30, 40 years ago, reading part of a book by a physician at Duke University called Anger Kills. And he was showing the effects of anger on the physical body, how it was deteriorating physical health. What we also found early on in HeartMath's research is that there was very little information out there about the effect of positive emotions. And then a little bit came out, psychoneuroimmunology was the term for that. And people began to explore a little about the positive effects that you could have if you were experiencing emotions, the kind that have long been associated with heart. If you'd like, I can give you an example of one quick study that we did.
Yeah, please do.
Yes.
There's an immune system component that we have called secretory IgA. And this IgA is the body's first line of defense against invading pathogens. It exists in the saliva, right? So it's a part of our immune system. So we found this little study that had been done at Harvard where this person had basically measured people's IgA levels. And then they watched a Mother Teresa video and they measured them again. And they saw that after watching the video, the IgA levels went up a little bit. And that was hidden in the research literature. I don't know how our scientists even found this thing, but they decided to replicate the study, but do it in a more sophisticated way. So we brought in a group of test subjects, measure their IgA levels. Then we asked them to experience, a negative emotion. What are you upset about right now? What causes you worry and concern? Are you anxious about something? Try to feel that feeling, if you will. And we asked them to do that for 5 minutes. After they did it for 5 minutes, we measured the IgA levels again. And then we tracked them for 6 hours. Like for every hour for 6 hours, they do another test, right? And analyze the results. What we saw when that came back was immediately after they experienced that negative emotion, the IgA levels actually went up. They actually increased. And my interpretation of that would be maybe the body was trying to defend itself. But what happened an hour later was it dropped to 100% below the baseline in that test group of test subjects. And during the next 6 hours, it slowly climbed. Even after 6 hours, it's still not returned to baseline. That's 5 minutes of feeling anger or frustration or something like that. We brought them in a week later, same group, took the IgA levels again. This time we asked them, experience 5 minutes of care. Try to feel care for someone or something in your life. And they would self-evoke this feeling of care. After they got through the 5 minutes, measure the IgA levels. Big spike, even higher than the one when they were doing the anger and the frustration. An hour later, it returned to baseline. But then during the next 6 hours, it slowly climbed. So the point of that, summary of that for me, a simple summary is like 5 minutes of anger suppressed the immune system component for over 6 hours, and 5 minutes of care boosted during that same type of time frame. The question I think me or anyone can ask ourselves, or you can ask yourself, the listener, viewer, is how often do you experience anger and frustration versus care?
Yeah, that's
and what is that doing to your body? And that's just one measurement of one component in our physiology, an immune system marker. So those kind of studies we've done in the past, a lot of them, and there's a clear correlation between our emotional state and our physical health. And and I see this in people.
Oh yeah,
I see people, and most you do, I'm sure as well. You see people who they're all the time upset about something. They're all the time judging something or complaining about something, and they seem to be creating separation in their life. There's almost a sense of conflict in them. It's ongoing. And you watch their physical health deteriorate right in front of your eyes over a period of months or years. Yeah. I've seen it time and time again. I've had relatives that I've observed that in.
Same.
For sure. What about the difference between anger and sadness on the heart and the body? Is there a difference? Is one worse than the other?
I wouldn't say worse. Obviously, they're very different. I mean, anger is a very volatile short-term response. When you get mad, you get mad. You lose it. You go into a dumb mode. Your brain begins to shut down. That's when you say things you shouldn't say, or when you behave in ways that are not your best self. What's happened is that anger causes the autonomic nervous system to trigger. The sympathetic nervous system jacks up real quick, and next thing it throws your whole system out of balance. But here's why I know it's short-term. You can't sustain anger for long.
You never met my mother.
Well, you kind of can, but let me put it a different way. Do you ever feel really debilitated and tired after you've gotten really mad?
Sure.
You burn a lot of energy, and the body can't burn that energy for so long, and then it begins to have to back off a little bit. Sadness is another story. Sadness is a bit more long term. Sadness can be a persistent feeling that can last for a lifetime. So it's like, if you look at anger, it's draining the battery fast. If you look at sadness, it's draining the battery slowly. It's slowly burning it through the sadness that we feel. So, what I want to be clear about, though, is that anybody who's experiencing a feeling of anger, or they're in a period in their life where there's a lot of sadness, it's important to understand that you're not alone and there's nothing wrong with you. This is part of life, and all the emotions that we have, we're going to experience some of those. The good news is that we can learn to choose emotions and change the emotional state. It's something that I thought everybody understood, and over the years I found out, no, they don't. You have the ability to choose emotions. Most people think emotions are reactions, and they are reactions. But what is missed in this is you can choose your own emotional responses. And the more aware you get, the more conscious you get, the more heart connected you get, the greater your ability becomes to actually do that. And what a gift that is. I mean, people sometimes, I want higher consciousness. I want to know what that is. And you want higher consciousness. And I would say one of the highest states of consciousness and most beneficial ones we could experience as human beings would be able to choose how we want to feel when we want to feel that way. That's a real skill set that's a great gift when we begin to do that. And we can. That's the good news.
I agree with you. I agree 100%. There's always the factor of choice. And it's not an easy thing to switch up, especially if you've been conditioned a certain way or have been. So all of this leads beautifully into my question is we have a lot of very empathic, sensitive listeners. Samantha and I are very empathic and sensitive. And I can feel other people's emotions if they're angry or if they're upset. So if I'm self-regulating and I'm doing this, but then I walk into, say, a toxic work environment, or I walk into a family situation that someone isn't self-regulating, can I apply the HeartMath to myself as a buffer kind of a thing, even though I'm okay, I'm cool, I'm doing what I need to do? But since we are so sensitive to other people's emotions, would this apply to that? I don't even know if that makes any sense.
Makes a lot of sense.
Oh, okay.
I do understand.
Thank you.
The short answer is yes. And, one of the things I think that the people that are empaths that often do struggle with is managing that sensitivity that they have. It's not easy because you're sensing and feeling more than, say, ordinary people would, and without some regulation there, that can be a very discomforting place to be. The empathetic person may not be able to fully experience the benefits of that ability because the emotions are getting in the way. There's one way I could try to explain how you can buffer it or why it can be buffered. And it's not the total explanation, it's one version of an explanation. Our physical heart is an electrical organ. It produces a lot of bioelectricity, the strongest source of bioelectricity in our bodies. When we go to a doctor, for example, the doctor says, now it's time to do your electrocardiogram. What do they just say? Electrocardiogram. They're going to measure an electrical signal being produced by your heart, see the QRS form, and determine something about your heart health. As it turns out, the heart is producing enough electricity, it's creating a magnetic field that is surrounding us in 360 degrees, everybody. Measured with very conservative equipment. They're called magnetometers. They're used to measure magnetic fields. That field can easily and consistently be detected up to about 3 feet or 1 meter outside the body. So we have this field around us, 360 degrees, extending beyond the skin out into space about 1 meter, 3 feet. What we have found is that the information in that field, magnetic fields contain information, and the information that we put into our magnetic field is our emotions. We're imprinting that field by what we are feeling. We can take a snapshot of that electromagnetic field, run it through a scientific process. Don't want to confuse listeners, but it's called spectral analysis. It's kind of like looking at the ingredients in a cake, in this moment in time. And when we take a snapshot of someone's field when they are feeling the stronger negative emotions, what we see is what's called an incoherent spectra. There are a lot of frequencies in the field, but they're disorganized and they're sort of competing with one another for available power. Conversely, when we take a snapshot of someone feeling an emotion like genuine care or real appreciation and gratitude, those kind of emotions, we see what's called a coherent spectra. We see frequencies working together, ordered and harmonious. Now, here's why this is important. First of all, we are bathing every single cell in our own body in these frequencies. Mm-hmm. Secondly, we are broadcasting them out into space. And so an empath very often can be sensing in the field. Now, let me take it a little step further. What scientists believe is that this field is much bigger than 3 feet. That when you look at it through different lenses, not just magnetometers, that it's possible that it's connecting with a vast network, energetic connections on this planet and beyond. And that it's through the heart's field that we're making that connection. And there's some interesting theories around that in the heart's field. So it's not limited by a 3-foot barrier. It could be beyond the limits of traditional time and space. But when we are more connected to our hearts and we enter a state which we call here at HeartMath and for research, they call heart coherence, a highly ordered state physiologically and psychologically. When we are in a higher coherent state, our field is much more ordered. It's working together harmoniously. In that regard, I believe it can buffer us from the negativity, so to speak, or whatever the other fields are. Coherence is more powerful than incoherence. When we're walking in life in a state of coherence, we're going to be buffering a lot of that stuff that's coming our way. It allows us to maintain more of our own connection to our authentic self, our balance, our solidness begins to emerge. So that's one way of possibly explaining it is through the heart's field and understanding the heart's field. There may be other ways that could be explained, but that is one way to take a look at it. And the anecdote to being so affected as an empath by the stress and the strain that other people are under is to become more heart coherent yourself. And we train people how to do that. And that's what our technology does. I mean, it's all about increasing heart coherence at a lot of levels in what we put out into the world.
Well, tell us how you do that. How does the technology that you guys offer and the app actually help the coherence to form?
We measure changes in our heart rhythms. The official name for that type of measurement is called heart rate variability analysis. You probably appreciate this, Samantha. I have to say that slow. It's a lot of words at one time for a Southerner.
Yes, you did great.
Heart rate variability analysis. HRV for short. Thank you. That's an acronym. So what that is this. It's like we go to a doctor says your heart rate is 75 beats a minute. We don't usually question that. We think our heart's beating in this sort of mechanical 75 beat rhythm. Not true. What the doctor gave us was an average. Your heart rate is constantly speeding up and slowing down. It's supposed to. We want a lot of variability. It's speeding up and slowing down all the time. As I move my hands like this, as I speak, my heart is pumping blood in nuanced ways through the changes of the heart rhythm. So physiological movement is a big influencer of heart rate variability changes. What our researchers found was that so is emotions. Take a person, put them in our lab, sitting in his chair, stationary, not moving, not talking. Again, ask them for an emotional response. Feel frustration about something in your life. You start feeling frustrated. What we see is instantly the heart rhythm is going into this wild, jagged, irregular pattern. And I'll explain why that's not good in a minute. Then we ask them, and we've done this many times, and some of the most famous HeartMath graphs and charts are of the difference between frustration and appreciation. We ask them to shift the emotional state. Now start feeling appreciation for something in your life. What we see happening is the heart rhythms become very smooth and ordered. They're like rolling hills. Heart is speeding up at a certain point. It naturally begins to slow back down. Then it speeds up again. And it's this rolling hill thing. When you have the jagged, irregular pattern, it's hard on the physical body. It's hard on the nervous system. not good for the physical heart. It's triggering hormonal releases into the body where we're taking on hormones that we don't want too many of, too much of. Adrenaline, cortisol, those kind of hormones. It's sending signals through communication pathways that exist between the heart and the brain, back up into the brain. And those irregular heart rhythms are sending information that shuts down the higher perceptual centers of the brain. We don't think clearly. Okay, so we make the shift. We go from frustration to appreciation. Rolling hills, opposite effect starts to occur. Nervous system synchronizes. It's healthy. Physical heart is benefiting from that. Hormones are being released into the body that regenerate us, like more oxytocin, the love hormone, more DHEA, generically called the anti-aging hormone. And then the signals going from heart back to brain cascade up into the brain and actually create cortical facilitation. They open up the higher perceptual centers of the brain. And all that is happening as we change heart rhythms. So what our technology does, you take the sensor, this is called the HeartMath Coherence Plus sensor. There happened to be one laying on the table here. It wasn't a planned prop, but there's one. I'll go with my empathic intuition and pick it up. Take this sensor and you connect it to your earlobe. The sensor connects to an app called the HeartMath app, which you can get on any of your favorite app stores. It's picking up information from your earlobe, your heart rhythms. Then patented algorithm kicks in and it takes those heart rhythm patterns and measures and scores them for how coherent they are. So you're using the technology to look at your coherence levels. And then the app is full of learning, full of experiences, a game, 25 hours of content and guided exercises and all kinds of really wonderful content to teach you how to become more coherent. So you're learning and you're measuring at the same time. So how we measure it, that's a long answer to your simple question. We look at it through looking at heart rate variability changes, a medical scientific discipline. And HeartMath's researchers here today are some of the world's leading authorities on heart rate variability. And so that's how we do it. So we created technology that anyone can own and use, not just medical people, not just some super expensive thing that you have to only have in a research lab. So the HeartMath app and the Coherence Plus sensor are what we offer the world and the public. And you can check that out. There's a way you can try it for 7 days for free and get out of it. And so I'm not trying to sell you a sensor and an app today. I'm just saying if you want to try it, I'm just letting you know it's easy. Not only that, here we go. This is a sales pitch now. This has a 30-day money-back guarantee on it. If you didn't like it, you can get your money back. But anyhow, it's great technology. It's being used by millions of people. I use it every day, 2 times a day. It's a wonderful way to improve your physiology and your psychology, your psychological patterning. To get to coherent, there are a couple steps. One is breathing. And the way we do it, it's called heart-focused breathing. You focus in this area of your body. You breathe naturally and normally in a rhythm that's comfortable for you, nothing forced, not counting and all that stuff, but probably deeper than you normally would. And as you breathe, you begin to imagine as if the breath is flowing out through this part of your body, through the area in the center of your chest. That begins to synchronize that autonomic nervous system. And breathing techniques, there are a lot of them. They've been around forever. And anything that's helping people now, thumbs up from me. But the real magic begins to happen when you start to make the emotional shift. So while someone is doing heart-focused breathing, when you're using the technology or not, you do the heart-focused breathing, then you make an attempt to activate a regenerative, uplifting emotion. So you can maybe think of some things in your life that are going well. Appreciate the good things in your life. Or you can try to feel the love or the care you have for someone or something. Maybe it's a person. It could be a place. I mean, these places that we love, right? Or a really great one that people use is their pets, because the pets evoke so much of a loving response from them. So you activate a regenerative, uplifting emotion while you're doing a heart-focused breathing. As you do that, what you'll see is those heart rhythm patterns begin to change. They move from the normal, jagged, irregular patterns into that rolling hill type pattern. All those benefits that I shared a few minutes ago begin to happen. The other benefit, which I don't have hard science on, I have my self-scientist on, is this. When you hit that higher coherent state, it opens you up to your larger self. That's when the intuitive downloads begin to happen. That's when spirit begins to merge with your humanness. That's when you begin to see bigger pictures of everything. You see into people, you see into situations, you see into life. That's when the expanded awareness occurs. So what I've experienced in my life, and I think I've seen it in many others, is the doorway to many of those higher awareness states that we're after come in through the heart. They're not mind-based. You don't think your way into them. Anytime I've had wonderful experiences like that, it's when I was feeling a deep sense of love. So the ultimate regenerative, uplifting emotion is love. Now, a little small word with a lot of different facets and meanings to it. But when we're experiencing aspects of love, that is when we begin to really operate at that whole next level. And it comes through the window of love and the doorway of the heart.
I think that's one of the best advertisements I've ever heard for meditation, but I like that your sensor and your app, there's so many things out there that can monitor your heart rate or tell you how you slept, but this seems as though it's teaching you, which is great too.
Yeah, well, there's a new PR pitch right now that's happening through our PR agencies. What's missing from your wearables? They shared it with me this morning, and I would say, well, I haven't thought about it yet. I haven't been booked on a show yet where that's my subject matter, but I would say the wearables are good because they're tracking stuff, but tracking without treating is not much good. I had a professional cyclist, a woman who was on our U.S. Olympic team. I was talking to her about heart rate variability one day, and she was like, "Is this like those wearables?" I said, "Well, kind of, but not really." And she says, "Well, good, because I don't need to wear anything to tell me I had a good night's sleep." So the wearables have usefulness, but I think you have to treat as well as track. And the HeartMath app does that. That's one of the things I love about our technologies. We measure, and people love to have measurement. They love the data. They love to see the measurement. And I think that's the curiosity and the inquisitiveness that we have as people. But once you've seen it, then what do you do to change it? And that's where we come in with the training side of what we do, with the tools and the techniques, which they preceded our technology. The tools and the techniques were around long before we had the science to do the technology. So they're just tools. And
Yeah.
I like sharing about them in an interview like we're doing together now, because I think I want people to know what is available. And I would be a little remiss if I know that what we have is helping so many people all around the world. If I didn't mention it, it would be like I didn't give enough.
Yeah, to do your whole job.
I'm a little bit obsessed with brainwaves. It's kind of my geeky thing that I love. As you were speaking and discussing the coherence, some of the notes I was writing down was about deep breathing, meditation, going into an alpha or a theta based wave state that makes you more receptive. And when I do that, I do feel it regulate in my heart. I do feel like my breathing and no one can see me moving my hands in an undulating wave. So what I'm gathering is that your app would help you see that process happening. So it would correlate beautifully with the physiological response that you're having.
Yeah, and there's a lot of a real scientist should probably speak to this, but we've done lots, and so have other people, around looking at the synchronization occurring in brainwave states relative to changes in heart rate variability. Some of the research we jointly do with Joe Dispenza, for example, is exactly about that, because Joe's about heart and he's also a lot about brain, right? And so they've been doing a lot of different studies showing all the brainwave measurements he's doing, correlating them to changes occurring in heart rate variability patterns, showing the direct connection at moving into higher brainwave states as we become more coherent. So they work together. Heart and brain are friends. This isn't all about. It's all about heart. Forget the brain. They work together, and so there's a definite correlation between higher coherent states and brainwave state changes. And what I think is interesting too, just a little aside, I just remembered this. Early in our research, there were some really cool people that showed up. I guess I don't know why we sort of magnetized them early on, and they were coming in intrigued by what we were trying to do and offered to help. And so some of those were really famous researchers and scientists. Most of them are deceased now. But one of them was Joe Kamaya, who's considered to be the father of biofeedback. And I've met this guy a number of times. He was around early. So he was definitely not down on us doing heart research, even though he was the father of, he's the guy that named the 4 brainwave states you just named, that guy. Right. So there's a connection between the two, between the heart and the brain.
Very cool.
That's amazing. Has your research shown that there are different effects that different stress has on the body. So, for example, someone who has a fight or flight or freeze response, that I would imagine would affect the body chronically in one way versus someone who's just in a period of their life where there's constant chronic stress, but they aren't necessarily a stressful person. There's the situations around them are legitimately stressful. Is there a difference on those two types of stress on the body and the heart?
There may be. I don't think there'd be a lot of difference, but what is different is how long these stressful responses persist. Because the accumulation of stress is where the real damage is being done. You sort of mentioned a couple of different kinds of stress. I look at it as three different kinds. One is a generalized stress that we experience. That's the person who's not normally stressed, but hey, they just got some bad news. They have a relative that's become very ill, and they're stressed about that, and whatever. The normal stressors that we're all going to experience in our lives. There's things like health-related stressors. Could be money. Can be certain dissatisfactions with their jobs. It can be relationship challenges and problems, things like that. And that's going to happen, and that's the generalized stress. Now, if we don't do something about that, what happens is we adapt. And pretty soon we're living in a life that's permeated with stress as being the norm. And that leads to what I call the second kind of stress, which is chronic stress. People wake up in the morning, they're stressed before they even get started. They go through the day and they go through various degrees of stress and non-stressed. And when they get home at night, they feel like, what a day. And they go to bed feeling stressed and they wake up the next day and the same pattern begins to be right there. And it becomes chronic. It becomes a standard baseline of the way people are living. Now, if something doesn't happen there and some sort of intervention doesn't occur, you end up in what's called clinical stress. And that's the people that have got the health issues as a result of it. The doctor's saying, look, I can give you a different prescription, but until you deal with your stress, this heart condition you have is not going to go away. That's the person that has to go to a lot of psychological counseling, and there's many, many millions of people. So if you're one of those people, and I just mentioned that, I'll go back to what I said earlier. Please don't feel bad about yourself. You're not alone. And a lot of people are there and they're taking lots of medications, and lots of different drugs to try to manage themselves. But it all starts at the very beginning when we're not managing the general stressors in our life more proactively. So the effect to your question, Samantha, would be, I think that the effects are similar in the short term, but as the stress accumulates over time, then those same type of problems become bigger. And the effects take a larger toll on us. And we're talking about the physical body, but I think another consideration, what about the quality of life? There's so much goodness in the world, so many wonderful things we can experience. There's so much joy that's really available to us. But when we're seeing life through the lens of stress, one day after another, so much of that gets missed. And I think, one of the things that continues to motivate me 35 years later of being a part of HeartMath, it's like, I don't want people to have to suffer as much. And I see so much of what I call self-created stress. Things people are doing that are just creating stress in themselves. And they're not doing it because they're bad people. They're doing it just because it seems like the normal thing to do. They just don't know that there's another way.
Anything can become a habit.
That's true.
Stress.
And I'll quote you on that.
Yeah.
Samantha said,
well, I know that some of the newest research based on your site is on the impact cognitively. And we have an epidemic right now with people having Alzheimer's, dementia, cognitive decline. Is this, because I do think that there's a correlation for some people. I'm not making that a blanket statement. Do you feel that if someone learns to self-regulate the emotions earlier and that becomes a consistent pattern in their life, it could positively impact not having that decline?
I'm sorry, did you say something?
That was good.
Absolutely. And I think that, the way it works, another simplistic way of looking at this is we have what's called neuroplasticity. It means the neural circuits in the brain are very, very malleable. That's how we learn new things. We're going to learn to play golf or something like that, or a new computer program or some AI thing we're doing. We do it repetitively enough, it begins to change the pattern in the brain, and then we know it. right? And it becomes natural to us. So the brain is very malleable. So when we began to run information into the brain, signals from the heart generated by regenerative uplifting emotions, we began to create those kind of neural circuits in the brain. And they began to open up more of those higher perceptual centers. And then feeling those type of emotions that I think we really want to feel becomes easier, becomes more natural. Now, scientifically, there are studies going on, and I should be more on top of this than I am right now, but there's a recent study that was done looking at a variety of things on early stage Alzheimer's. And they showed big results. I don't have all the numbers and statistics in front of me, but it's a published study, a major study. And one of the interventions was using their technology. So there were other things. I can't just say, well, using our technology, created big changes in early stage Alzheimer's, but it was part of some things they were doing. Some of it was diet based and all that as well. But I think the beauty of that study, the exciting part of that, is to say that there's now scientific evidence that if you take proactive steps, you can begin to reduce the chances of having things like Alzheimer's. In a non-disease oriented context, what I see is that the stress in life is creating what you see at times now in different articles and things. They call it brain fog. People just kind of fogged out. They can't think clearly. They can't make decisions as clearly. And that would be an example of something you really can change, the brain fog. But people are going through brain fog a lot right now. It's a major thing in life out there. When you think about, when I read different articles, they always talk about sleeplessness and the sleep problems people are having. It's an epidemic of that. And now they're throwing in brain fog in the same articles because people are experiencing that. And it's coming from processing the events of life through the stress response all the time. We have the stresses in our lives, which I mentioned earlier, but then we got all these external ones going on. And that's why the stress levels are going up. We have the wars. We have a lot of climate change concerns. We have political divisions. We have a tremendous amount of economic uncertainty right now. And most people that I run into and talk to, they're living in a state of low-grade anxiety. They're questioning what's really going on, what's going to happen, what's going to happen to me, what's this world going to be like for my children, and it's just constant anxiousness because the world's going through so many changes so fast that nobody can sort of keep up with it and handle it. So that's why it's even more important today to learn to help manage stress, and doing it through the heart's the best way I know. This type of subject matter would not be this kind, if I could pick the perfect subject matter to talk about, that I'd want to talk about. But if I care about people, then it's important that I do speak to it because that's what's happening. That's where the world is right now. And that's where many people, good people doing good things, people that have been working on themselves for decades are still going through this feeling right now of the uncertainty, the anxiety. The reason for that, I believe, is that we are in an era of high-speed evolutionary change. We are experiencing more change in less time than ever before in the history of humankind. The reason we're having so much change so quickly is that the speed up in consciousness is happening. So actually behind it all is something very good. We are evolving and growing, and the world is changing right in front of our eyes. And through a very short window of time, by comparison to how long things usually take and how long we've been here, a little short window of time, within a generation or two or three at the most, we are birthing a completely new and different world. Unlike anything we've ever seen, much less can imagine. And that's where I hang. That's where I hang out. I see that future. That's what I believe is really happening. To get there, we have to go through, taking care of some business here. And some things just have to go down, have to be balanced out. We have to learn to go to our hearts. A lot of times when the stress levels get strong enough, it's the heart people will turn to.
And it's exactly what it is I agree with everything that you're saying. And I truly believe that these changes, I've said this over and over, and I'll continue to say it, is to bring us together in humanity. We're human beings. We're a species on the planet. And with what you're saying is that your technology, your HeartMath program, everything that you're talking about, it has absolutely nothing to do with demographics or location or religious beliefs or political beliefs. It's being a human being and feeling, which we all have inclusively we all feel. And so thank you for your work. That's incredible.
Well, thank you for yours. And I'll share this one thing with you. I mentioned Doc Childry a couple of times. He's HeartMath's founder. He doesn't take a public role, never has, but he's behind the scenes at HeartMath. Let's put it this way: without Doc Childry, there would be a not a HeartMath, right? So, and he says things sometimes very profoundly. He can say a lot, and he can say it in many different ways. But sometimes he says things that are very, very simple. But as you unpack the simplicity, you see that there's a lot going on behind it. And one thing he said repeatedly lately is that, the best way to solve the world's problems is for people to learn to get along better. Simple.
Simple but true.
Get along with ourselves for starters. And learn to reduce some of the separation, the biases and the judgments and us against thems and all that go on there. Learn to want to cooperate. Learn to want to connect and appreciate. We're not going to resonate with everybody. We're not going to have to condone everyone's belief systems or actions and that kind of thing. But I think what we can do is have a more open, neutral perspective about all that, instead of so many hard lines being drawn. People do that. They do it right in their immediacy, and they're the people right around them, much less on the global level. But they do it. They cut off from people just because of something that they didn't like the way they said, or they find out, well, she voted for him or he voted for her and all that, and they'll just break them right off, and put them in a box, right? And that's not getting along. Getting along is being more open to that and more embracing of that, and recognizing what you said, Denise. We're all people. And one of the things that's helped me with judgments, for example, would be looking into things a little deeper and seeing that people are doing the best they can in the midst of a very challenging existence for most folks. And they're doing the best they can. It doesn't mean I like it. It doesn't mean I'm endorsing it, but I don't have to write them off and say that they're wrong, they're bad, they're not good, and put them in the box. I can just say, they're probably doing the best they can. Yeah. There's another line that I got from someone else. I think it was actually the comedian Robin Williams. He said something pretty profound. He said that everybody you meet in life is fighting a battle you know nothing about. So the waitress in the restaurant, the person that's sitting next to you on the airplane, it's like every single person, if you were to dig down and start talking to them and vulnerability occurred, you'd find out about what challenges that person may be facing. So you don't know what people are really going through. So if I can recognize that and acknowledge that in myself, it reduces the judgments I have. And who's the big winner in that? Me. Because it runs less of that through my system, and I don't need to have those thoughts and feelings. I don't need to put those limitations on other people and then in turn limit myself. All that stuff comes from the heart. Going back to our theme today, we see heart as an intelligence. We call it heart intelligence. I co-authored a book called Heart Intelligence. It's about an intelligence that we have. It's high speed. It's intuitive. It's the kind of intelligence that guides us and looks out for us. It's the birthplace of these emotions that we know we benefit from and want more of: care, love, compassion, kindness, all those emotions. And it is a place where we find our self-security. And you add all that up, and it's an intelligence. It's not just a sweet thing. It's not just an emotion. It's not just an organ pumping blood. It's an actual intelligence. It's a state of consciousness. And as we learn to cultivate that state of consciousness and then apply it in how we navigate life, life is going to get better. People ask, what is HeartMath? I say, well, it's just like psychological equations. Put more heart into life, life will get better. It's a simple equation. I've learned things like life works better for me when I'm trying to give more to it than I'm trying to take from it. And it doesn't mean that I don't want things that don't have, things that I desire or aspirations or hopes, but I always have to be cognizant of what I'm giving, not just what I'm trying to manipulate out of it. Simple equations, but they come from, the intelligence of the heart. So as we cultivate that, and those of you that are watching this now, empaths, I'm sure you have these type of awarenesses and sensitivities and maybe saying things to you like, well, so what? And you already knew that. But, developing your own connection with your deeper heart, I think would add to the degree of the empath type of intelligence that you already have. Could give it a more well-roundedness and certainly prevent some of the stressors associated with that degree of sensitivity that you have to carry in your life, which is part of your gift and part of your curse, I'm sure, at times. Yeah.
But it'll build up our immunity energetically and physically to that negative situation Denise was talking about. So it's a win-win. Well, before we wrap up, tell people where they can find out more about ordering and learning about the HeartMath sensor and app.
Yeah, go to heartmath.com, simplest way. And right there on the homepage there, you'll see it, the sensor of the app, the whole thing, and it's like, go to heartmath.com. That'd be your best bet. Of course, just like most organizations today, and ours included, just all the social media stuff, the YouTube channels and the Instagrams and the Facebooks. And, we have like over 500,000 Facebook followers, for example. So, there's a lot of people that keep up with us that way. But for your next starting point, go to heartmath.com, and there are free things there. I would like to share some information about something free that you may be interested in. We created a learning program a number of years back called the HeartMath Experience. And we created it so it could be like a learning. It's 90 minutes, but you learn in 10-minute chunks. There's 9 chapters. And we filmed it and produced it in a high quality so that it looks like you're watching a movie, cinematic learning. And we teach all the major HeartMath tools and techniques in it. And it's done in a way that's entertaining and visually engaging and all that. And yet you're learning the tools and techniques behind this whole system. We intended to sell it. We came out with it in early 2020. And we immediately put it on the market and started selling it. This thing called the pandemic showed up. And Doc, our founder, came and said to us, look, right now, people are inside their homes. They can't go anywhere. They're scared half to death about what this thing is and all that. They need something to do, and they need to learn some things that can help them. What I want you to do is, for just a little while, if you don't mind, I want you to give away the HeartMath experience for free. Yeah. So we did, and we contacted a lot of our friends and other organizations and stuff, and told them about we were doing this, and they said, this is a great idea. We'll do it too. They put it out there. What we found is within just a period of several months, we had 600,000 people access that thing. And a lot of them were brand new to us. I think only 40% of the people that did that were already in our database. So we immediately found that we were increasing our reach by giving something away. Later on that same year, marketing team and finance team does their thing, and they could show that the people that came in to watch that then often purchased something. And we generated over $1 million in sales from that program as a direct link to the program. So in other words, we made $1 million giving away something. And the reason we gave it away is because our founder said, a heart thing, it's time now to give. So today, tracking it got licensed by Gaia. If you're a Gaia member, you can see it there. It's been put in film festivals and all of that. And today it's been watched by something like 2.5 million people. When you go to the heartmath.com website, click on learning, personal learning, you'll see it there. It's free to you. It's still free today. We never charge for it again. So that's what I'm saying is you can entertain yourself and learn if you just go to heartmath.com and do that. If something like the sensor interests you, it's there as well. But one of the ways in which we produce the HeartMath experience is we never mention the sensor, the technology, anything. As a matter of fact, in that program, we never refer to ourselves.
Yeah, I did notice that. But that's a great example of how if you're doing something from a heart-centered, positive place, it's going to echo back to you.
It worked out. I was not necessarily for it in the beginning. As an executive vice president, I was going, do what? Give this thing away. Wait a minute. But you learn.
Kids, trim Santa's list this year.
you learn as you go. But I just wanted to mention that because as someone watching, as you're watching now, that's something you can do for free on the heartmath.com website. Getting the coherence sensor and app is a great tool for you if that's something that that you can that resonates with you. But let that just be your personal choice. Let your own heart be your guide on that.
Thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed talking to you and listening and learning from you. We really appreciate it. We're going to put all this information in the show notes and we'll post it on social media and tag you as well. But we just really, from a heart-centered place, we really appreciate you and the work you're doing.
Both of you are really cool.
Thank you.
You want to interview
it was fun.
certain every interview is different, and some of you feel just more resonant and conversational than others, and I just felt comfortable with you, like talking to friends. And so
Oh, thank
made
you.
it easy for me to do this interview. And if you ever want me back, I'll come back.
We would love that. Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Please remember, as always, to show up, do great work, and share your light.
Take care.
Bye now.